the Martinborough Masterclass for Stream Wineman event, and firstly, a little quick apology, some typo that we've half an hour late. So this is a very brief session. We've only got 20 minutes, so we're going to get right into it. Harold Masters on my right, sorry, on my left. We've got two other winemakers who will appear in a minute, hopefully. Tim, where's Tim? Oh, here he is. Tim, sit over there, please. And we're just waiting on Lance Litchwell. So there's four of us presenting 2010 Pinot Noirs here today. They're on the sheet in front of you, and they're in the order as printed. So we're going to just quickly run through why Martinborough is where it is and why it's successful for Pinot Noir, and then allow you to taste the wines, and then each of the growers are going to talk very quickly. And I would just like to stress that this is an interactive session. Hopefully we can get some questions from everybody that we can hear over the noise. So the brief history of Martinborough started about 1980, and we've really hung our hats on Pinot Noir. It's a very cool climate district and ideally suited to the early ripening varieties. And we're situated, again, we've got some AV problems for the first time up, but we do have a map here, but I'll try and explain it. We're in the southern end of the North Island, about 1 hour from Wellington, for any of you who've been there. The main reasons why we're in the district is we're in the driest place in the North Island, about 28-inch annual rainfall, 700 millimetres, on a very importantly, a very free draining alluvial gravel soil type, which gives us two strong points that grapevines require free draining soil, but also these soils warm up very quickly in the spring. We want soil temperature for successful growth. The other thing is, well, all the important wine growing regions in New Zealand are on the east coast. Our prevailing weather comes from the west across the Tasman. It's very wet on the west side of the country. The mountains through the centre divide both islands north and south, and so we have a rain shadow on the east. It gives us much more reliable ripening and much more reliable drier summer. So that's the two important reasons why the region's there. We're on the same latitude as Tasmania, about 41 degrees south, so we are well south, and as I said, it's a cool climate district. I think the other thing that's very important is that we are close to Wellington. It's the seat of government in New Zealand, and a bit of a joke that we always think there's a lot of lunches in Wellington, so with the politicians. But the trade has adopted us as their regional wine producing district. Now, we're looking at 2010 vintage. I'd just like to talk a little bit about that this year. It's a very, very good year for Martinborough. Fantastic summer and quite unique in it wasn't extremely hot, but very successful right through. The important part was our March and April, our two most important ripening months, we had perfect weather. And it meant there was firstly very clean fruit, no disease pressure, very long ripening season. So we talked a lot about fruit ripening on the vine. The longer it's on the vine, perhaps the more flavour, the more successful the harvest will be. And then the final month, April, for harvest, we don't want any pressure to pick. So we're really looking for ideal weather, and we make the decisions rather than the weather. So yeah, it's a perfect year, and I think these wines are going to be very interesting for you to have a look at what we regard as an extremely good season. I think it's just worth just thinking about these wines stylistically. What will you expect from these wines? And I'm sure you're all very familiar with Burgundy, and even perhaps to a lesser extent the New World wine styles. But New Zealand in general, and particularly Martinborough, we can firstly put it into the New World category, of course. We do tend to make wines that are a little more robust, a little richer, perhaps a better fruit expression, a little bit more structure in a lot of cases. but certainly a volume of fruit. And I think one of the things always interesting in our part of the world, we talk about varietal character a lot. And our Sauvignon Blancs are a very good example of this discussion. You'll all be familiar with them. They're very powerful, very fruit-driven, and I like in-your-face wines. But we're not here to talk about Sauvignon, but that varietal character comes through in all varieties in New Zealand, and they all express their own flavours very strongly. Pinot Noir is no exception. So we will see wines, I think, in this group that are a little more robust, as I said, a little more coloured, a little more deeply coloured, and a little more fruit-driven flavour profiles. And in the best examples, we see the complexity overlaying over the top. So as winemakers, we're perhaps looking initially for great fruit flavours, and then we add the winemaking influence and start creating complexity as well. So I would hope that these wines aren't a pure expression of fruit. They should have layers of flavour and other characteristics that really turn it into being Pinot Noir rather than fruity red wine. So I think that's perhaps about what I'd like to say for now. We're going to give you a couple of minutes to just try the wines, and then each of us will come back and give a description of our wines, and then we'll ask you if there are any comments. So just give you a couple of minutes. We'll keep this moving along. I'll introduce Helen. Sorry, I'll start with the escarpment. We are first off the record. So my name is Larry McKenna. I'm the winemaker for escarpment, and it's the number one on your sheet. As I said, this is a very good example of the style of wine we like to make. I think perhaps one of the things that does set this wine somewhat apart from a lot of others is the level of structure or tannin in it. We look for very ripe fruit, and then in our fermentation processes start looking for structure, particularly from stalks. So we're getting a certain amount of whole bunch in this fermentation, and we're giving wines with better structure, better texture perhaps, certainly better longevity and better marrying with food. So, and as I said, it's a fantastic vintage. We're very proud of that wine. It's a very good example. So I'm going to hand over to Helen, the winemaker for Adirang, to talk about her wine.
Okay, so wine number 2 is the Adirang 2010. So Adirang was one of the first wineries to come to Martinborough, so back in 1980, so our oldest wines are now 32 years of age. So our style, I guess you'll see this here, is very, I guess most of us as winemakers make wines in a very similar manner as to what we see in Burgundy. So even though our wines make a New World style, the actual winemaking techniques are very similar. So here, all natural ferments, the wines are go through a very simple process, but in the end result you can see has its own mark, and it's definitely Martinborough. So for us, I guess our house style is really, we're looking for wines with really sort of long colours, very seamless, very fine integrated tannins. There's a lot of tannins, and also a level of minerality that you get from the very stony soils. And the wines definitely take a long time to evolve. I think that's one thing about Martinborough as different to the other regions of New Zealand, is that the wines tend to have more of a savoury base, more of a sort of minerality, rather than just straight sort of front forward fruit expression. There is a sort of a length to these wines, and I think that's really a regional characteristic of Martinborough. So I'm going to pass it on to Tim Coney, who's the next one.
Good morning, or for over the cusp, good afternoon. This is the first time I've been to Lords, which is a curious thing, I guess, because my younger brother Jeremy used to captain the New Zealand cricket side, and has still fought his way into the clutches of the BBC and does a little bit of commentating and lives in Oxford. That's nothing to do about the wine, obviously. I'm a lapsed city dweller, like many in Martinborough, who get sick of their crops. So I would say 12 or 13 years ago we bought a paddock and this was the shed, as you do, and broke out the long handles spade and put in our 11,000 plants. My daughter volunteered to go to Roseworthy, which is a well-recognised establishment for the treating of the fruit once it's picked. My function is to look after the vineyard. That 2010, Larry has already spoken a little bit about the importance of sunlight and free drainage, so we won't talk about that, but the thing I've noticed in the shortish period we've been making Pinot Noir, our first vintage was 1999, is the variability in the characteristics of the fruit. As a viticulturist, you do the best you can, but at the end of the day, Mother Nature is going to have the final word. And the 2010, I think for most vintages in Martinborough, are very nice typical examples of the variety. I find personally that just a simple thing like trying to limit the yields. There's a general rule in Martinborough that a couple of tonnes per acre is about the maximum if you want to have a respectable and dense and the right degrees of tannin. And 2010 and 2008 are two years which I remember as managing to reach that criterion relatively easy. Sometimes you wander over that and the wine gets a little bit on the light side. So we also are very pleased with the 2010. We think it's got the right degree of density. It's a little bit high. I just had a look at the bottle there to remind myself. The alcohol's crept up a bit and is sitting on around about 14.5, which is about the maximum. I don't think that it's got any heat in the palate, which will be the first sign, obviously, of being a little bit out of balance. But we're pleased with that, and we say that that goes with pork, as Rachel used to go with Rod. Now, you're not familiar with Rachel, but she used to be betrothed to Rod Stewart before she was cast aside. So it goes with pork as Rachel used to go with Rod, and salmon is fine and dandy. Let me pass you across the lens.
Thanks, Tim. So I'm the proprietor of Cambridge Road. It's a label, a small petite label that we picked off 6 or 7 years ago. Just over the fence in Margarone. And I managed to pick up a little old vineyard, which was 1986. And it's really the old vines that reside on that site that form the foundations of the wines that I can share with you. And really form the foundations of my philosophy of winemaking, which is low cropping, natural farming, farm biodynamically as well, so those are things there. And the old vines by nature give us really low crops. So it's this wine in a year where for me the crops are about 60% of the average, even in a low cropping village with low crops. This one's a monster. Pretty much, for Cambridge Road, this is a slightly atypical style. It's bigger and earlier than my intentions in terms of what Cambridge Road stands for. It's a vintage that I'm very happy to have. It's a vintage that is carrying 14.5% alcohol, so higher than I like to hit for. And it's got this heavy tannin structure, which is attributed to maybe not only ripe fruits and seeds, but about 18% whole clusters in the ferment, so we've got this rich dense monster. The whole cluster work that gives you the skinny tannins, it's got fresh, clean antioxidants and slightly herbal free, which I think work really nicely in this wine to temper the sweetness of the fruits that sit at the outside. 2010, yeah, it's a monster. For me, it's a wine to use in the middle of winter. Cracking a fireplace nearby, maybe dense foods, balance it. Yeah, it's definitely a wine that holds nice to the year for me, carrying that to the heat. Look at 9 or 11 on either side of this wine, and you find wines that sit more in the mid-13s, and they've got that fresh crunch that can use all year round, and more adaptable for sort of classic, sort of lighter dishes and salads, sea tuna, sort of classic meals, etc. So that's pretty much where we're at. I think it's a nice similar introspective into a few of the better producers here from Martinborough. Some of you may be returning this afternoon to have a look at a few other producers from the same vintage. And it's a special vintage, and one that's well worth having in the cellar. I'd like to see my wine in about 5 or 8 years. I think we should see some pretty nice balance and emerging at that point.
Thank you, Lance. We do have to move this along. We've got a couple of minutes if there's any burning questions or any comments. Did you enjoy the wines? Thank you. This is, as I said, a very good vintage. It's a very good snapshot of where Martinborough is with Pinot Noir. But as Lance alluded to, there's 8 producers here on one table in the main hall showing our full range of wines. So it's a good opportunity to go and see some other vintages, 4 other producers and our whites as well. So I'd just like to quickly say that for me, Pinot Noir is about a sense of place. And these wines, if we're making great Pinot Noir, they should exhibit their place. And as much as, well, personally, I'd be thrilled if any of you confuse these wines with Burgundy. It's obviously the benchmark, but we're in New Zealand, we're making New Zealand Pinot Noir, and what we have to do, our job, is to faithfully reflect our site and our district. And that's what these wines do. They are very, very good examples of what our district does the best, Pinot Noir, and if they reflect the site and the place, that's very successful wines. They're never going to be Burgundy. They're made and grown in New Zealand, but they have to reflect where they come from. So I think that's the best sort of take-home message we can give you when you're going out there to taste this afternoon. Do the wines faithfully reflect where they come from, and that might be relatively hard to decipher, but have a look at the other wines around them. If they have a unique, distinctive characteristic, then true to type. So thank you for coming along, and thank you for your attention with the wines of Martinborough, and we'll hopefully talk to you out there during the afternoon.